It seems like everyone's talking about AI these days and what it might mean for our jobs, right?
It's everywhere you look.
Well, the paper we're diving into today takes a really fascinating new approach to understanding this whole AI and job situation.
Yeah, this one really got me thinking.
It's from the National Bureau of Economic Research, so you know it's legit.
The real deal, for sure.
And instead of focusing on robots taking over jobs, it boils everything down to compute.
Compute. Catchy, right?
Okay, so in a nutshell, compute is basically the brain power you need to complete a task.
Any task, big or small.
Think of your brain like a computer for a second.
I like this. Okay, I'm thinking my brain like a computer.
Some tasks need a quick burst of processing power, while others...
Others need a whole lot more, right?
Exactly. And this paper, it's called Scenarios for the Transition to AGI, argues that we can measure every job, every single task, by how much of this compute it needs.
So, like, imagine adding numbers in a spreadsheet.
That's like using your phone's calculator, pretty basic compute, right?
Right, but then imagine writing a program to automate your entire workflow, like from start to finish.
Now that requires a ton of compute. That's the kind of stuff AI is getting really good at and fast.
And that's where things get really interesting. Because, let's face it, our human brains, as amazing as they are...
They have their limits.
Exactly. But what happens when AI blows past those limits? What if AI can do even the most complex creative tasks we can throw at it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
That's what this paper tries to unpack. What happens to our jobs, our wages, our entire way of life as AI's compute score starts to leave us in the dust?
It's a little unsettling when you think about it.
No kidding. To tackle this, the authors look at two wildly different scenarios for the future of work and the results. Well, let's just say they're pretty dramatic.
Fork in the road time.
Big time.
So path number one, they call it unbounded complexity. This one says that no matter how smart AI gets, there will always be jobs that are just too complex, too nuanced for machines to handle.
These are the jobs that require that special human touch.
Things AI might just never be able to replicate.
Think about it like this.
Okay, now listen.
Composing a truly great piece of music, something that really moves people, that takes a level of creativity and emotional depth that, at least right now, seems out of reach for AI.
Or how about crafting a persuasive legal argument in court?
Oh, that's a good one.
You need to understand not just the law, but the emotions of the jury, the nuances of the case.
Exactly. That's the core of unbounded complexity. This idea that human ingenuity has this almost magical quality that's really hard to pin down, let alone replicate.
Okay, that's path one. Path two is a little different. It's called bounded complexity, and it doesn't pull any punches.
All right, so bounded complexity, this scenario says that our brains, even at their most amazing, they have a limit.
There's ceiling.
And AI could reach that ceiling, potentially even smash right through it.
So in this scenario, there's no task too complex for AI.
It's a mind-blowing concept.
Every job, from the analytical to the creative, could potentially be done by a machine.
From crunching numbers to writing poetry.
Wow. Okay, so we've got two very different paths. One where humans stay ahead in the compute game, and another where AI takes the lead, potentially changing the whole landscape of work.
Two radically different visions of the future.
And this brings us to the big question, the one I know is on everyone's mind.
Hit me with it.
So, which path are we headed down? More compute for humans or AI running the show? And maybe more importantly, what does all of this mean for our paychecks?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? The money question.
Always is. So what did the authors find?
Well, their findings, at least initially, might surprise you.
Oh, how so?
They found that in both scenarios, wages could actually go up as AI gets more powerful, at least at first.
Wait, hold on. That seems a little counterintuitive. Why wouldn't AI taking over jobs mean, lower wages for everyone?
It makes sense if you think about it this way.
Okay, I'm all ears.
As AI takes over those really repetitive tasks, the ones with lower compute requirements.
Right, the more mundane stuff.
Exactly. It frees up humans, frees up our brain power to focus on more creative, more strategic work.
The high-value stuff.
Exactly. It's like AI becomes this ultimate productivity booster for the entire economy.
So instead of replacing us, AI is actually making us more valuable.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
We get more done faster, and in theory, that means bigger profits for companies and hopefully higher wages for workers.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Got any real-world examples of this kind of tech-driven wage growth?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about the invention of the ATM.
Okay, the ATM going way back.
Right. Back then, people thought tellers would be out of jobs, right?
Hmm.
Replaced by robots.
Now that you mention it, I do remember my parents talking about that.
But Did bank tellers disappear?
Hmm. No, they're still around.
Exactly. Their roles shifted from just handling cash to more complex tasks. Things like advising customers on loans, investments.
More specialized roles.
And you know what's really interesting?
What's that?
The number of bank tellers actually increased even as ATMs became common.
Get out.
It's true. Banks became more efficient, opened more branches, which led to even more jobs.
Wow, that's a really interesting parallel. Okay, so initially, it seems like AI could actually be good for wages.
That's what the paper suggests, at least at first.
At first, right? Because I
Yeah.
have a feeling this roller coaster ride isn't over yet.
You're picking up what we're putting down.
Haha. What happens in the long term?
That's where those two paths we talked about, the unbounded complexity and the bounded complexity scenarios, really diverge.
Okay, so let's break it down one scenario at a time. What happens to wages if we assume unbounded complexity? That those uniquely human jobs always exist.
In that scenario, wages could theoretically keep rising forever.
Forever.
Well, there's a big but here.
There's always a but.
That rosy future, that only happens if there are enough of those super complex jobs to go around. Enough for everyone.
Right, because if we're all competing for a small number of those high compute jobs,
It's Economics 101.
supply and demand, wages go down.
Exactly. It wouldn't matter how creative or how skilled you are, you're competing against a lot of other highly qualified people for a shrinking pool of jobs.
Not a recipe for success.
Not at all.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for the other path, the bounded complexity scenario.
No.
What happens to wages if AI really can do it all? And I mean everything.
Well, in that scenario, wages eventually hit a wall, a hard wall,
And
and then they start to fall.
whoa, really? Not just plateau, but actually decline.
That's what the model predicts, yes.
How is that possible?
Well, remember, this scenario assumes AI can automate any job,
Even those requiring creativity, emotional intelligence, all that.
even those.
Yeah.
If there's really no limit to what AI can do, then human labor as a whole, it becomes less essential, less valuable.
Too many workers, not enough jobs, even if those jobs are super high level.
Basic supply and demand, but with much, much higher stakes this time.
Man, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around that.
It really is. And keep in mind, this is still a simplified model. The real world is always more complex.
You're telling me. We've barely even scratched the surface here.
And it gets even more interesting.
How so?
This paper doesn't just stop at those two scenarios. They throw in some curveballs that make this whole thing even more complicated.
So we've got these two possible fissures, right? One where humans maintain an edge and the other where AI just takes over. But it gets even more interesting. This paper throws in some curveballs that could really change the game.
Oh yeah, things are about to get really wild.
Curveball number one, nostalgic jobs. What if we just decide, as a society, to keep some jobs human only, even if AI could do them better or faster?
It's a fascinating idea.
Right. The paper suggests that this could actually help to, stabilize wages and give people a sense of purpose, especially in a world where everything's changing so fast.
Think about jobs like judges, therapists, positions where human judgment and empathy are so important.
Or teachers. We have AI learning platforms, but there's something about a human teacher that just feels irreplaceable.
It's about preserving those human elements of work, even if it comes at a cost.
It really makes you think about what we'll value most in a future shaped by AI.
Big questions.
Okay, so we've got nostalgic jobs. What's the next curveball?
This one's about superstar workers. The paper suggests that as AI takes over more routine tasks, the gap between the most skilled workers and everyone else could actually widen.
So some workers might see their wages stagnate, maybe even fall, but those at the top, those superstars, they could see their incomes skyrocket.
It's a real possibility. Think about it. If AI can handle the routine stuff, the demand for people who can operate at the very edge of human capability, those superstars, it's going to explode.
So we're talking top-tier scientists, artists, entrepreneurs.
Exactly. People who aren't just keeping up with AI, but pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is.
Incredible opportunities for some, but what about everyone else?
That's the challenge, making sure that the benefits of AI are shared broadly, that everyone has the opportunity to thrive in this new world.
Okay, 2 down, 1 to go. What's the final curveball?
This one might surprise you. Right now, there simply isn't enough computing power to go around to automate everything, even if we wanted to.
Really? So the very thing that's driving all this change is also what's holding it back?
In a way, yes. We're still in the early stages of the AI revolution, and access to computing power is a bottleneck.
So, ironically, that limited access might actually be helping wages in the short term, right?
It's buying us some time, but it's a temporary reprieve. As technology advances, that bottleneck will disappear.
And that's when things get really interesting. Or scary. I can't decide.
Let's just say the future is unwritten.
Yeah.
This paper definitely gives us a lot to think about.
It really does. More questions than answers, but that's what makes a deep dive so fascinating, right?
For sure. It's about asking the tough questions, challenging our assumptions, getting us ready for what's coming.
So, for everyone listening, here's a final thought. What if the key to thriving in this future isn't just about having the right skills today, but about our ability to adapt and learn new ones? Almost like we're constantly leveling up our own compute score.
Like a real-life video game.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe that's not such a bad way to think about it. We humans are adaptable, we're curious, we're capable of amazing things.
We'll figure it out.
This deep dive, it's just the beginning of the conversation, right?
Absolutely. We'll include a link to the paper in the show notes if you want to learn more.
And we always love to hear from you. Share your thoughts with us on social media. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.